Greetings, my friend, and welcome to the Red Delta Project YouTube channel with another video to help you break free of the diet and exercise rat race. I'm Matt Schifferly, and today I'm exploring these ideas on why I'm probably never ever going to follow a regular fad restrictive type diet in my quest to be as healthy, lean, and fit as possible. Of course, this is a very big difference from back in the day when I first started my fitness journey well over 20 years ago, when I thought, well, you have to be on some sort of a diet to control your eating, and therefore you have control over your weight and control over your health and control over your performance. And so I was always jumping from one kind of diet to another, low carb, low fat, low sugar, paleo, everything under the sun. And it didn't matter what kind of diet I followed, the outcome was always the same. Lots of stress on mind, body, lifestyle. Whatever results I got were temporary and short-lived. And ultimately, it just ended up having me set back in worse shape than I ultimately started, which just started the cycle all over again, thinking, okay, that wasn't the right diet for me. I need to find a different diet. But now, having come to an understanding of a fundamental approach to fitness, on how fitness and food and diet and nutrition actually works, I've really started to understand that not only are diets completely unnecessary, but for myself and for many of the clients I've serviced over the past couple of decades, I really do firmly believe that most people are going to be much better off never following any type of these strict restrictive dietary approaches. But before jumping into the actual reasons why, I want to make it very clear that nobody here on YouTube or whatever has any business whatsoever telling you how you're supposed to eat. That's the job of a registered dietitian. It's not my goal with this video to tell you what you should and shouldn't be eating, because that's obviously not my business and completely outside my scope of practice. Instead, this video is about removing that idea that you should be following a diet or that you have to follow a diet if you want more control over your health, weight, performance, and just overall quality of life, because that's certainly not always the case. So the first reason why I'll probably never ever follow any of these dietary approaches ever again is because they leave you with a very inhibited ability to actually control your ability to manage your weight and your health and your performances up. And I know that's a little bit weird because we often get into these dietary cycles and traps because we buy into the story that's been sold to us that we will have control, that we will have control over our weight if we limit our sugar, that we will have control over our health if we just don't eat certain foods or what have you. However, this is not at all the case. Because we humans, one of our most primary needs and desires in life is to control, especially that which we feel less in control of. So when our weight feels all over the place, when our health is feeling kind of a little helter-skelter, it's very intoxicating to get addicted to the feeling of control. And that's what diets ultimately give you. They don't actually give you that control because understanding that fundamentally, nobody ever has full control over their health and their weight and stuff like that. And diet, while an important influence, is by no means ever going to give you that control, because everything, especially when it comes to diet and nutrition, the process of which is consumption versus expenditure/storage. And there are loads of influences on both sides of that. It's far more than just carbs or sugar or glycemic index or fat or whatever on that intake side. On the expenditure side, it's far more than exercise and far more than hormones and insulin and all these sorts of things. And the reason why nobody will ever have full control is because there's always influences to that process that you have no control over. But that's perfectly fine because you don't need full control. You just need a little more control. But what diets ultimately do is they will take that process and say, there's a lot of things that are a part of that. There's a lot of influences to your health and your weight and all of these other things. But let's ignore most of them, shall we? Okay, and just focus on one thing or a very narrow approach like red meat or sugar or glycemic index or whatever that is. It's like a sport coach saying, ignore all the other players on the other team except for one player and just focus on that one player and ignore all the others. Well, it doesn't matter how much control you have over that one thing, you're ultimately forsaking a lot of control over the other things that do still play a role. And that's ultimately why these diets rob you of control while giving you the intoxicating, addictive feeling of control. And moreover, it's also just removing control of your choice. You're not actually making the decisions on what you should be eating. The diet is making those choices for you. So when we have less of a dietary approach and more of a healthy eating approach, we're making our own choices, we're covering far more influential bases, and you're getting much more control that's a lot easier to maintain. The second reason why I'll probably never follow any sort of restrictive dietary approach is because usually the benefits that come from such approaches are only happening within a short window time frame. And then the ultimate long-term result of following these diets is actually the prevention of the actual benefits we're after. This is especially the case when it comes to weight loss. And again, here's why. Remember, we are fundamentally adapting to whatever diet and exercise habits we have. So we have our consumption versus our expenditure. And when we make a change to our diet, we're changing that consumption part of the process, and we're throwing ourselves a little bit out of homeostasis. And the reason why everything in fitness works is because when we're out of that homeostatic balance, we have adaptation. Our body is changing and having modifications made to it in order to regain homeostasis. And it's during this adaptation period that you're getting the, quote, results that you want. You're losing the weight, your energy level's going up, you're getting stronger. All these things are happening. And that's a good thing. However, it's temporary. It's not supposed to happen forever. In fact, your body is evolved and designed to let that window happen as short a time frame as humanly possible. And the more you diet, the more you condition your body to spend as little time in adaptation as possible to regain homeostasis. This is why someone may initially start to diet and they can spend several weeks, several months even losing weight, and then they regain it back, and eventually, very often the case, but then they're like, okay, I'll do the diet again, and they start losing weight, but it's for a much shorter time period. It's only like a week, and their body's right back into homeostasis. Now, in the eyes of Mother Nature, that's a win, that's a victory. The goal of all adaptation in everything in fitness is to get you back to a homeostatic state where you're no longer changing. You're not losing the weight. You're not improving your health. You're not getting faster on the court, whatever the case may be, because that's what your body's adapting for, the prevention of change. We change to ultimately not change. And all dietary measures have a very limited influence that is very finite, because you can only do so much. You can only cut sugar so much and so forth. And once you've done that, you're no longer improving anything. So that narrow window of adaptation where you're getting those positive changes is shorter and shorter and shorter, and you're going to spend much longer periods of time basically in a plateau. Your weight's not going to change, your health isn't going to improve, nothing's going to get better, because as far as Mother Nature is concerned, mission accomplished, we've regained homeostasis under the new dietary measures. So when people come to me and they're like, what happened? It's no longer working. Actually, it is, because that's what diets are actually fundamentally supposed to do, is prevent the changes you're actually looking for. The second to last reason why I'll probably never follow a conventional restrictive diet is because when we are basing our dietary approach on that restrictive practice, there's this perpetual increased cost to the diet of effort and a diminishing rate of return. So let's say, for example, you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to get rid of processed foods and sugary things and junk food. Okay, great. Now, you start off not eating as many candy bars, you give up soda and stuff, you start to see some good benefits, you're losing weight, and you're like, well, it's not all that hard, this is pretty good. So then you get more restrictive and you're like, okay, I'm going to stop eating any sort of processed foods whatsoever. No more bread, no more pasta and stuff. And you get some more benefits, but maybe not quite as much. And you get more and more restrictive. It's like the walls are closing in on you, and it's getting tougher and tougher to keep the restriction going, ever so more restrictive. But it's really not going to do a whole lot more, because initially that daily candy bar and the soda that you were drinking were a pretty big influence to that process. So you were getting some pretty good result from it. But when you're starting to remove the carrots from your salad because you've heard they're high in sugar and stuff, you're getting now to the point where it's taking a good amount of effort, relatively speaking, but the influence is so small, it's not really going to do anything. So you're basically walking this perpetual hill that gets steeper and steeper and steeper, and you're making less and less progress for the effort you're putting into it. And eventually what ends up happening most of the time is you're just clutching on for dear life, or you end up rolling back down the hill and you got to kind of start all over again. And the final reason why I will probably never follow any sort of a fad diet, conventional type of restrictive diet, is the simple fact that these things can be very stressful. Stressful on mind, stressful on body, stressful and hard on lifestyle. In our Western fitness culture, we've kind of come to accept that it's supposed to be really hard on mind, body, and lifestyle. It's supposed to be really stressful. And sometimes that is certainly the case. If you're a bodybuilder dieting down to step onto a stage, yeah, that's going to be really, really hard. But that's sure as hell not the type of diet most people should be following for any real serious length of time or even be healthy. Instead, we want to recognize that fundamentally, a real, true, healthy diet is supposed to remove stress from your mind, body, and lifestyle. It's supposed to make your body feel better. It's supposed to make your mind more at ease. It's supposed to enhance your quality of life rather than restrict it. When we have stress on mind, body, and lifestyle increasing, that's always a sure sign that our diet's not all that healthy or as healthy as it should be. And when we find ourselves feeling better physically, mentally, anxiety, guilt, all these stressors we have emotionally and mentally about food, when that all is going down, that's usually a good sign that your diet is actually getting healthier, and it's supposed to be more of win-win-win with less effort rather than the other way around. So eat well, my friends, eat to satisfy, get plenty of good whole foods, and you don't need any of these types of restrictive diets unless you have a medical reason or a religious reason to do so, or just a simple personal invested interest in following a particular diet. Then go ahead and experiment with things, but they're not in any way, shape, or form necessary. And again, most of the time, you're probably going to be much better off without them. More videos here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you in the next video. Till then, be fit and live free.